What's going on, peeps? Bear with me for a minute. I'm probably going to be going all over the place. Whatever. Man, I've just been watching all these videos on YouTube and just researching online, and I'm watching all these Democrats try to steal our guns from us. And it's really pissing me off. It's really making me mad because these motherfuckers have no idea what they're talking about. These people that are advocating that people's property be confiscated from them, they have no idea what they're advocating. Because if you say, ban all guns, let's ban all guns. I want all guns banned. Okay, well, what does that mean? What do you mean by that? How do you think that that's going to get done? How do you think that that's going to happen? Well, you're going to have agents of the state. So you're going to have men with guns go to other people's houses, point guns at them, threaten them with violence, and then take their guns away. So what you're actually saying is, I don't want gun violence, so I want gun violence. So people that own weapons that aren't conducting violence, you want people to go conduct violence against them, okay? And then take their guns away. So you just want to add extra gun violence to the equation. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes a whole lot of sense, dude. And this is the issue, is politicians and people that believe in government and politics, they want all the evil in the world to just cease to exist. They want to be completely safe, and they just want all the bad guys and all the evil and anything that could ever possibly happen to them, they want it to just be eradicated. So the world is perfect and everyone's a good slave. And that's just not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And the reason why we're in the condition that we're in right now is because a very minimal amount of people are anarchists. And there's only two types of people in this world. There's statists, people who believe in the state and government, and then there's anarchists, which people that don't believe in rulers. They don't believe in somebody else having a higher claim over your life and your property. And true anarchists operate off of fundamental principles like the non-aggression principle. Really, here's the thing. All of you out there, you're already anarchists. You just don't know it. You're already an anarchist. The only problem is there has been this ideology that has totally fucked your head up. And it's called statism. It's called government, which it's a religion. And people get really confused. How is that a religion? You know, it's a belief system. And the God in the belief system is authority. Okay, that's what it is. The God in the belief system is authority. And what authority is, I mean, just think about what authority is. Who's an authority figure? Well, it's someone that bosses you around and takes your money and tells you what you can and cannot do, and they have a set of rules that you have to obey. It's a slave master. That's what authority claims to be. Anyone who is an authority figure says, I'm your master, and you have to obey me. And if you don't, I'll throw you in a cage, or shoot you, or beat you up, or do whatever. But the fact is, here's the thing that separates authority figures from gang members, is the gang member who is attacking the individual, that individual doesn't have an obligation to obey the gang member. He doesn't have an obligation to do what the gang member says because he doesn't view the gang member as legitimate. He doesn't look at him and say, oh, well, you're totally conducting violence on me. I think this is totally legitimate, so I'm going to do what you say. No, he might do what he says out of fear of losing his life, but there's no legitimacy to what the gang member is doing to the individual. But if a police officer does the exact same behavior, it's viewed in the mind, okay, because authority has plagued your mind, that is viewed as legitimate. So if I drove around in a vehicle and I was just pulling people over for having, like, I didn't like the way their windows were tinted, or I thought their pipes were too loud, I would actually get arrested if I did that, because I'm not authority. You know, I don't have the right to do that. But really nobody has the right to do that. It's the illusion of authority. You are, like Larkin Rose says, you hallucinate the legitimacy to authority. You have an individual that is power tripping over you, and you are hallucinating a false reality, and you feel like you have an obligation to obey his commands. And that's the type of mind control that they have over you. And that's what it is, dude. That's what government is. Government is mind control. It's an idea of authority implanted into your mind that makes you think that you have to obey what they say. It's like the perfect plan to hold people down in slavery, because it's very difficult to enslave people physically. I mean, we've already tried to do that. History, humanity at least, not like me and you, obviously, but obviously human beings have enslaved other humans for a long time. Like, pretty much, I mean, you just think back. Just think back, dude. There was always slaves. Slavery just now pretty much ended, okay? Like 200 years ago, right? But people don't realize that slavery is still happening. You are a slave right now. You are 100% enslaved. Because you think that government has a legitimate right to rule you. I mean, when you go and vote, you beg for them to give you more freedoms. I mean, you're already free, man. You're already free. When you were born free. You already have a right to your property. And you have a right to your labor. And we gotta tease these things apart and really look at them objectively. And really understand morality. Because if we don't understand these dynamics, then we're not going to be able to realize that we're totally enslaved. You know? If a slave master tells his slave, look, I'm expanding my plantation. It's going far out into the state. I mean, pretty much, I own all kinds of land. You can just go out there. You can build a house if you want. Okay, you can move out there. I'm not setting you free. Okay, I'm not setting you free, but you can go live out there and you can have a little family and build your house or whatever. But a portion of your money, I'm not going to take all of it. Okay, because I have a heart. I'm a good slave master. So you're going to give me 30% of what you earn, and if you don't, I'm gonna bring men with guns to your house, and I'm gonna threaten you with violence and death if you try to disobey. And if you don't pay me, I'm gonna throw you back in your cage like a dog. Or if you run away, I'll just take your property and take your house. So pretty much, you obey whatever I say, or else I take everything you have. That is what government does. That is government. Government says, I have the right to tell you what you're allowed to do. I control morality. And if you disobey me, I fucking kill you. Or lock you in a cage. You need permission from the government to do everything. You can't even drive a vehicle without daddy's permission. You don't even own your own house. You pay property taxes on that. Yeah, and they give you some bullshit excuse like, oh, well, it goes towards public schooling. Well, okay, let's think about that. Let's say none of that existed. And let's say there was a school down the street that you wanted your child to go to, but you couldn't afford it. Would you go over to your neighbor Bob's house and say, hey Bob, Jenica can't go to school and I really want her to go to this school, so can you give us like $1,000? And Bob's like, man, I'm broke, dude. I'm sorry, I don't have it. And then you go, no, like, I'm telling you that you need to give me $1,000 because if you don't, these men with guns will throw you in a cage. You would say, I would never do that. That's immoral. That's immoral to go steal someone else's money and then give it to someone else, even if that other person needs it. It's still bad. But when you go vote, you vote for a politician to do that to your neighbor. Something that you would never do yourself, you advocate that somebody else go do that to your neighbor. So really it comes down to you are delegating rights to other people that you yourself do not have, which is impossible to do. Because if you don't have the right to tax people and you don't have the right to take people's stuff, then how could you possibly delegate that right to somebody else? Unless they had a monopoly over power and violence, and they had a monopoly over your mind, and they got you to hallucinate legitimacy to their behaviors and actions, even though they were totally immoral. And they get you to believe that you need them in order to survive. Because without them bossing you around and taking your stuff and making you get permission for everything, these little bit of bad people out here would just be conducting violence against everyone, and people would just be eating each other, and it would be chaos and death. And that's what they've gotten you to believe. That's what you believe, man. And it's the craziest thing in the world. Imagine you're on an island, and there's a bunch of people on the island, and you know some of them are bad, right? You know there's probably about 5 people out of 100 people that might be up to some shit. And then you said, you know what? There's about 5 bad people on this island, so we're gonna take 20 of us and give them the right to boss us around, take our money, and harass us, and do whatever we want, and do whatever they want to us, so they can save us from those 5 bad people that we might not even see because we're on a giant fucking island. I mean, that is the lunacy of implementing government. That's how crazy it is. Instead of saying, oh, the world can be dangerous, I should prepare for that. You know, if every person did that, I think that we would be okay. I mean, people are extremely creative and efficient and can organize in hierarchies and fix things and take care of things and figure out solutions for things. We've been doing it for a long time. Government just makes it a million times more difficult to do any of those things because they make you jump through a bunch of hoops and get their permission to do things that you already have a right to do. They don't produce any revenue whatsoever. They literally extract revenue from everyone around them, and all who disobey, they threaten them with violence. They just tell you, I'm going to fuck you up if you don't do what I say. So we're like, okay, all right, I'll do it, because the majority of people don't want confrontation. We don't want to enforce violence against our fellow man. I mean, when we're driving down the road or walking down the street or, at the supermarket, that is a perfect example of a free market at work. That's a perfect example of just human beings interacting. And, we move around each other, and, we get out of the way, and there might be a little bit of confrontation, and we might say, hey, fuck you, or whatever, and then we move on. It hardly results in, death. But that is going to happen sometimes, because look at where we live. We live on this planet, okay? We live on a giant floating ball. There's all types of shit going on. And having government doesn't make it any better. It makes it 20 times worse. Because the government, if you look back in history, even in the past 20 years, government has murdered more people than any other private individual ever could accomplish. Period. Government is immoral violence. That's what they are. And then you have these corporations, and you have people that believe in authority. They all try to use this mechanism of immoral violence against their fellows, and it seems like the people in power knew that human beings would be attracted to that. They're preying on a negative aspect of humanity. People want power and control, so we will offer this legitimate violence, because it's not if a gang member did that, you wouldn't think it would be good. They wouldn't be allowed to do that. But if you put a badge on and you wear a suit and you say, I'm government, then your violence automatically becomes legitimate, because everyone hallucinates it to be okay. They believe that it's real, instead of taking a step back and looking at the behavior and saying, no, that's totally immoral. He doesn't have to do that. He's doing something wrong. He doesn't have the right to do that. That happens all the time. That's happening every day. When your labor is getting taken away from you, that is immoral. It does not matter if the poor person down the street gets some of it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make it okay. Two wrongs don't make a right. Okay? And we need to understand morality and know what it is. And not just make up what right and wrong is. Because that's what the government tries to do. Morality is inherent in nature. We know it. We know what is right and wrong. Just like we know we're alive right now. I'm talking with you, you're listening to me, you're conscious and you're conscious and you're aware. And you're using your conscience and you're saying, I'm exercising conscience. I wonder if Brandon is full of shit or not. I wonder if he's honest or not. And you're using your own discernment for yourself to judge the difference between right and wrong. Government is the complete opposite of that. Government is just telling you what right and wrong is. And you are believing that it is legit because they have said, I have a higher claim over your life and I am God. And if you do not believe that I am God, I will kill you. So you are coerced into believing something that's completely false. And that's why we are in the condition that we're in. We are not free at all. We are slaves. We are totally 100% enslaved by the government. And we could be so much more prosperous if we understood true morality and quit trying to force our opinions and ideas onto other people. We need to have that mutual respect and let that other individual make a bad choice and learn from it. Cause and effect. That is also in nature. And that's where we start getting into natural law and stuff like that. But that's the key, is morality and natural law. If you behave a certain way in this physical domain, there's laws like gravity set up, like this, I can drop this 100 million times and it's going to fall. That's the law of gravity. There are laws inherent in nature for beings that have the capacity to understand what right and wrong is. Like, you're not going to teach a dog or a cat mathematics, or you're not going to be able to explain to him the concept of what gravity is, because he doesn't have the capacity to understand that. But a human being who is more intelligent, more evolved, and more understanding can say, oh, these behaviors are bad and these behaviors are good. If it's harming another individual, it's immoral. So if you take somebody else's wealth without their consent, you are conducting harm against them, and that is immoral. You can't justify it and say, I'm going to take this because this other person needs this. Then you would be a communist Nazi. So we need to understand these things, and the way natural law works is you put a good behavior into the universe and you receive that back. Now, it's not like if you do something bad and you did something terrible and then you get hit by a car and you're dead right after that. That's not how it works. But you can observe it in reality, where conduct your behavior correctly and do good things and pay attention to what you're doing and make sure it's moral, and you will get that feedback. You will get the good feedback. 100%. And shit happens. We live in a huge world, you know. There's a lot going on. But the reason why there's more negativity is because more people are behaving immorally. And more people are just wanting to give away their personal responsibility over to an authority figure because they don't want to be personally responsible for themselves or anything that happens to them. They want somebody else to fucking deal with it. And all that does is create chaos and evil. And that's why we're constantly going to war, and all this shit is because people are... There are groups of people that understand that they can project their ideologies onto other people because the human mind is malleable. So they can get you to believe something in a certain way, and that gives them power over you. And then you are now looking up to them as an authority figure, and they can now just boss you around and tell you what to do. And you obey it because you have a religious belief that they have the right to do that. And most people don't even know that they have that belief. They can't even see it. Just like if you tell somebody who's in a cult and you say, hey, like, you know what you're doing is crazy, right? And you're in a cult. They're not going to say, oh, I'm in a cult? Oh, okay, thanks for letting me know. I'm totally going to quit now. No, they never do that. Ever. They don't even know what you're talking about. They think that what they're doing is normal. Just like people who believe in government, and people who are police officers and military officers. They are in a satanic cult. Okay? That is what they are. They're cult members. They're gang members and they're cult members. They've given away their conscience and their free will choice to somebody else, which is evil and immoral. So now they are an empty vessel that is able to be manipulated and controlled to do immoral things. Like pull people over and harass them and fuck with them. Beat unarmed women half to death shoot black people whenever they want. These people are psychopaths, and they believe that they have more rights than you do. They think that they are higher than you. And that's all part of the brainwashing and conditioning that they've received. They've received, like, when you go into the military, they absolutely fucking brainwash you, dude. They totally defragment your mind and implant a new thought process in reality. And they separate you and get you to get in this collectivist mindset where you're separated from civilization and you're with this whole group of people, and they tell you that you're separate from the civilians. Like, those civilians over there are different and we are better than them because we're saving them and all this stuff. And then they just hammer this ideology in their head over and over with constant repetition and trauma, putting them through ridiculous physical activity, and they're eating shitty food and getting like hardly any sleep. Dude, that's how you brainwash somebody. You get them into a fragile state and you break them down, and then you implant a new ideology in their head. And then when you finish doing that, they'll do whatever you want. They'll do whatever you want them to do because they're complicit cult members. So yes, they will listen to something that Hitler tells them to do because every soldier believes that he is the moral one, that he's righteous and he's doing the right thing because his master told him it was okay. It's not like the soldiers in Nazi Germany were like, oh yeah, I know the US is over here and we're totally the wrong ones, you know, and they're totally right, but we're still going to fight them anyways. No. They believed that they were okay, that they were the ones that were right and the other guys were the bad guys because they were brainwashed. But that doesn't absolve you from your personal responsibility. And that's the negative thing about believing in authority, is you're saying, I'm not personally responsible for anything that I do because I'm acting on behalf of this imaginary fucking concept called authority and government. And I'm just doing what they said. And I'm letting them tell me what right and wrong is. I'm not going to figure out what right and wrong is with my own moral code or exercise my own conscience. I'm going to give that responsibility away to somebody else and have them tell me what I can do. You know what that makes you? That makes you a fucking coward. Okay? And I don't mean that in a super negative way, but it's the fucking truth. You're giving away your personal responsibility and saying, I'm just following orders. Oh, I just killed that little girl, or oh, I just killed that person I never even met because I was given orders to. Guess what? Doesn't fucking matter. You are the one that did it. So it's immoral for you to do that because you don't initiate aggression against somebody else unless it's in self-defense. Period. We know this. We learned this shit when we were kids. And this is why slavery is continuously perpetuated over and over again. Because you have people that believe in authority, that do the bidding of the rulers because they hallucinate legitimacy to it, and they don't want to figure out the difference between right and wrong themselves because that takes hard work. So they just do what they're told like good slaves and continue to enslave their fellow man. Police and military are the modern day house slaves. That's what they are. The house slave could get privileges that the other slaves didn't have, like a hot meal every night, or they would get to sleep in the doghouse. I mean, there's even pictures of house slaves that were holding guns, that had weapons, standing next to their brothers and sisters while they're in chains and shackles. I mean, you gotta be a fucked up individual in order to do that. You have to be a coward because you're not choosing to do the right thing. So you're becoming a coward in order to have some sort of power. And that makes you an evil person. that makes you a bad person. So, I've just ranted for so long. I just wanted to touch base on some of that stuff because it's irking me. And we need to understand these things because we're enslaved, and the only way that we're ever going to get out of slavery is to realize who is our master and who is enslaving us, and to understand that we are slaves. Because if we don't think we're enslaved, then we're never going to get out of slavery. And that's what the slaves thought back in the Civil War era, is that they were supposed to be slaves. That's what they thought. They thought, I'm supposed to be a slave, and it's illegal for anyone else to set me free. So if I were to steal myself from my master, that would be immoral, because the government told them their version of morality. So they remained enslaved and never got out of slavery, because they weren't willing to disobey the master, and they weren't willing to listen to their conscience, which is the true decider of right and wrong. Remember that. Later, guys.